Hello, hello, hello. How is everyone on this Thursday evening? Hmm, perhaps a quiet stream today. Let's have a look. See? All right. Video is looking good. Audio is unmuted. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. Awesome stuff. How is everyone doing? Almost end of the week. Hiya, hiya. One more day, and then another long weekend, I believe. For some reason, I think Monday is a public holiday. Am I right? I don't know. I don't know why I have that impression. Please double check. Please double check. Given the way these days are with the lockdown, it's like, where does the week start and where does the weekend start? It's yeah, it's a little bit crazy. Like this morning, I was placing an order for delivery, and already it was like, you know, if it says 2 to 5 days to ship, hopefully it's here before the weekend. And I look down and it's Thursday, and I'm like, oh, it's Thursday. Huh. Okay. Ah, okay. Yeah, I knew there was one close by. Okay. Thanks. There's a family call going on at the moment. The anti-insanity Skype calls with all the family members who can manage to join in. So, yeah, it's going to be a bit of background noise today. They call it the anti-insanity calls, yet it's like the insanity starts when everyone gets on the call. So I don't quite understand that. But I mean, hey, as long as everyone's having a good time, why not? Why not? All right, let's have a look. See, I think let's get this session on the road. As usual, a few disclaimers. Quickly before that, though, all my sessions are being added to YouTube. So if you just scroll down the Twitch page, you'll find the YouTube link. Additionally, we have a Discord community. For those who've never used or never worked with Discord, it's an area and a place to kind of go hang out, chat, and just kind of ask for help, see what others are talking about, and kind of just be a part of the community. At the end of the day, that's what we are trying to do here at Code to Career. The aim is to create a community for software developers, especially those with little to no experience. It's a place for them to get information on what to expect in the working world. I've worked with many juniors and interns over the years, and this is my way of trying to help them bridge that gap when entering the professional workspace. Some disclaimers. I am not claiming to be any kind of expert. I will share what I have learned, what I have seen, what I know new employees struggle with. Not everything works for everyone. You have to pick and choose what makes sense for you and what fits with your style and your attitude. We will talk about a number of things that can seem very abstract. This is what happens when you have little or no working experience. You have no way of understanding, unless you've been in those situations, what those environments are like. Remembering what we talk about will shine a light on the situations if and when you encounter them. There are a wide range of companies, cultures, and environments out there. So there is a decent chance that we will talk about things that you will never encounter in your career. Nonetheless, forewarned is forearmed. There are exceptions to probably every single thing I say. Situations are rarely simple and straightforward, and it is only our lack of understanding that make these situations seem simple or obvious. All right, so last week we talked about good dev. And this week we're going to, the title of the discussion is going to be Better Dev. And this is aimed around the idea of soft skills. Non-code specific skills, tools, and other forms of help that you can get to help you become a better developer and a more rounded developer. Yeah. So we'll start off with the basic issue, and that is problem solving. Developers are essentially problem solvers. You have tools such as languages, frameworks, code editors, and any number of other tools that you use. But ultimately, the idea is you use these tools to solve problems. Every valuable developer needs to be a good problem solver. And for solving problems, I kind of break it down into four very general areas. Logic, memory, focus, and experience. And a big part of problem solving is knowing how to think along these lines and how to use these ideas in a fashion that works for you. There is no one way to do anything perfectly. A big part of anything that we do and anything that we work with to do it well is to do it in a manner that works well for you. So let's start off with one very simple one, logic. Logic is simply an application of knowledge. If you don't know something, you can't use it to help solve your problems. And that is essentially what logic comes down to. For the most part, everyone knows how to take a set of beads and put them into a straight line. But when you have to make a string of beads that's 20 beads long, and you can't find 5 of those 20 beads, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have to try to find some way to produce those 20 beads, those 5 missing beads. When the reality is, those 5 beads are out there. You just don't know about it. So this takes us to our second area of focus, which is memory. A good memory is important, since we need a way to be able to remember that something exists. Previously, I've used the analogy of Legos. We need to know that a piece of Lego exists, even if we don't know every single detail about that piece of Lego. Because when it comes time to build something, we need to know as much as possible about what we have available. What is there in our toolbox? Otherwise, we will have to build those Lego pieces ourselves instead of just taking one that exists. So when you say, I remember reading about a library that does this a few years ago. Give me a little while to go and look it up and catch up. This is good, because you don't need to know every single thing about that library. You just need to know that that library exists. When you say, What do you mean I wrote that super buggy function? That's bad. It's important to remember what code we've written, even if it's just generally. Like, yeah, I made some changes in that area a few weeks back. I'll go and have a look. You can at least say, yeah, because it's very common in a team environment where someone will be trying to fix something and will just stand up and say, okay, who is the person who went and updated this function? And knowing that, you know what, I'm possibly the person that did it and I can go and have a look at it, while many people view it as a negative thing, is actually an incredibly positive thing. It's the kind of thing that brings value to the team, because when you're sitting and having a discussion and somebody is talking about something and you've worked with that and you have some knowledge about what they're working with, you can add value by just adding a comment about what they're talking about, either positively or negatively, based on your memory of what you'd worked with. So in a sense of, you know what, I'm the person that did that. People may not want to own up and say that because it can come across as something that's quite negative. But the reality is, it very quickly becomes something that's very positive, because you become reliable in your knowledge. Team leaders, seniors will know, oh, okay, this person, he's aware of what he's doing. He's remembering what he's doing. You do not want to be the guy that's like, oh, this thing is broken. Oh, wait, I'm the one that wrote this a month back. Huh, how about that? It sounds funny, it sounds silly, it's also incredibly bad. And it is something that's quite common. Developers, even senior developers, have goldfish memory when it comes to the code that they've worked on. In some cases, they don't even remember code that they've worked on yesterday, let alone a week back or the previous sprint. So that is something you should definitely try to improve, to take note of. There are many different mechanisms to improve memory. I knew someone who got through school by drawing. They would sit and draw every single lesson. Doesn't matter what the subject was. And when it came time for exams, they could remember quite well what had been discussed in the classes. That was their way, and it worked for them. The important thing is, find your way. Explore, try different things. There are many different ideas and thoughts and even courses on improving your memory. And the idea is 15 minutes every day will get you a lot further than trying to become an expert in a week and finding that you're not quite there. So a little bit at a time, and certainly you'll get a lot better at it. The next idea is focus. Being able to sit and solve problems and write code in solid quantities of time is not easy. Most certainly not at first. This is something that's not often focused on when you're studying, and you kind of just fall into whatever slot and pattern you're comfortable with, and it kind of just sticks throughout your studies in software development. And I know guys who can sit and kind of hash it out 10 minutes at a time. And I know others that will kind of sit and work for 3 hours flat, and then they can't look at code for the rest of the day. Their brains are fried, so to speak. But in those 3 hours, they get a massive amount of work done. So either of those is not really the place you want to be. It's really hard to kind of get any solid amount of work done in 10 minutes. By that same token, there are limits to how much we can push in terms of time. 3 hours, that's rough. And the longer you go without taking breaks, the more your focus and quality is going to drop. I remember watching a video where they talk about focus, and one of the things that they bring up is the fact that your brain is going to take a break. It's the only question is, are you going to be part of the process or not? Pushing 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, by that third hour, you're going to be phasing out. Even while you're typing out code, your brain will be thinking about some online game that you're playing, your boyfriend or girlfriend, anything that's going on in your life that's not currently directly related to what you're doing right now, your brain is going to transition out. And you're going to have to start pulling it back. Now, there is this idea of momentum. As you're sitting and working, as they say, the problem is loaded in your head. And via the keyboard, and you're just step by step unloading that problem into a solution. And so that creates a form of momentum. And so, as they say, you're kind of in the zone. That's that zone that you're in. The problem is hot in your mind. The creative juices are flowing. You can see the way to solve things quite easily and quickly. And you're managing to be productive, and you're managing to get this code out. But what happens is, over time, as that focus diminishes, you have to spend more and more time kind of manually thinking about it. And then less and less of the problem is, so to speak, loaded in your mind currently. So in the beginning, you may be focusing on the whole project. Every time you're writing a function or a line of code, you're instantly thinking, okay, which of the other classes is this affecting? Is this affecting any other of the web pages? Are there any API calls that need to be done to get this working? But as that focus starts to run out, what you will find is that you're less thinking about that, and you're more thinking about, okay, I need to write 4 more lines of code and I'll be done with this function. And what that affects outside of this function, other areas of the system, you're not even thinking about it. And so automatically, based on that, your code quality drops. Even though you're still writing code and you're still solving the problem, the quality of that solution is simply not as good. So yeah, some of us, we start off with, we can't look at our phones for, or we can't sit and not look at our phones for 20 minutes. It's like, it's crazy. And so that's also one of the blockers that we got to try to overcome to improve our focus. A very simple manner to improve focus is to basically just sit down. Not at your PC or laptop, no phone, not talking to someone, nothing. Just simply place a chair in the middle of the room, sit down, and just be. This is one of the best tests to your ability to be comfortable with not having any distractions, because that's essentially what it is that these distractions, these habits we've gotten ourselves into, is what's going to pull us away no matter how focused we are. So that's another area that people definitely struggle with in the beginning, and there are a number of different solutions out there, from timing apps to say, okay, I'm going to start now, and I'm going to put my effort now from 8 p.m. to 8:45, and then my alarm will go off at 8:45, and I'm going to take a 10-minute break or a 15-minute break, and then I'll start again at 9, and then at 9:45. And some sort of mechanism like that. And you kind of put in the schedule you're kind of aiming for, and the app helps you manage that. Those can be taken kind of one step further into the actual content of your time to say, okay, in this first 45-minute session, this is what I'm hoping to do. In the next 45-minute section, that is what I'm hoping to do. And kind of manage it that way. So the number of apps that manage kind of in that manner. A lot of the tools that we will work with in the office have capabilities to help us. Things like, whether it's your email or your chat clients at work, they have away statuses. They have ways of managing these things to say, you know what, I'm busy at the moment, and just kind of mute all my notifications until I'm out of that time. Some offices, especially to kind of when they're in a scenario where this is a problem for a number of developers, or this becomes a problem for other developers where you're talking on your phone, you're talking to each other, any number of different reasons. What they'll do is they'll implement office-wide quiet time. So, during certain times, you focus on work, not on emails, certainly not on social media of any kind, and you minimize everything except focusing on your work and getting your work done. So there's a lot that happens around this area of focus and this area of time management, because ultimately, if you can't manage your time, you don't have any space to focus within. So that's kind of the idea of focus, and it's something we have to practice. It's something that we grow with time. It's something that that kind of gets better, but it's something it only gets better if we're aware of it, and if we spend some time and make some effort to improve it. And it's one of those things that it's this idea of morale. Morale is how good is the mood, how pumped up are you feeling, how amped are you feeling to write this code or to work in your environment or your office. That's this idea of morale. And a big one is you'll hear of the concept of little victories, of small wins. If you've got this massive task that you need to get done, and it's really difficult to try to get going, break it up, bite-sized. Look at one function or one class, and start with that. And when you do it, even if it takes you 15 minutes to do it, take a break. Go and reward yourself with a cup of coffee, or just take 15 minutes as a reward to say, listen, yeah, cool, this project is off the road or on the road, and and we're off. And so the next step is another function or the next class, and you kind of keep going with this idea of small victories of and it's important to acknowledge these, because as you're doing this, you can do this massive task and it feels like, yeah, okay, finally it's done, it's over with, and it's less of a yes, I've won, and more of a I'm finally done with this damn thing, and that weighs you down over time. So it is important, and if you're in a team, that doesn't really pay much attention to this, to the mood, the morale, the energy, keeping people's spirits up. Um, Either you should start it, or you should start looking somewhere else, because almost every team that I've worked in has this focus. But talking to others, it seems I was lucky. There are many people who've not heard of this, don't think this way, and neither do their teams. So the idea of morale is incredibly important, not just for those around you, but starting off especially for yourself. Experience. Experience, we would think, is not something you can learn to learn. You would think it's just something that happens. And the way companies look at CVs and say, oh, okay, this guy has 3 years of experience or 7 years of experience in a certain role or using a certain technology. It's incredibly wishy-washy, and the reality is not all experience is the same. You can have someone who's worked with something for 3 years who knows way more about that something than someone else who's worked with that same thing for 10 years. And so it's not just about quantity of experience, it's about quality of experience. So that's what we got to try to keep in mind and try to aim for, is that we need to try to get as much experience out of and quality out of each day that passes, each experience and event that we go through. So gain experience by thinking like a diary. After each day or week or major issue, make a point to sit down and take notes of what has occurred. And I don't necessarily mean this literally. You could just, while you're taking a breather, getting a smoke break, having a cup of coffee, just take those 2 minutes and run through the exercise in your head. Think back. What was good? What was bad? What can be improved? Because there's always something that can be done better. This will go a long way to help your mind keep note of what has occurred. So often, after a stressful situation, your mind remembers very little of the actual content of what has occurred, and only really remembers how really stressful and crazy it all was. As they say, we don't have logical memories, we have emotional memories. That's the way our minds work. We want to use a mechanism to be able to take value out of that situation despite the stress that gets created and its effects on our memory. We want to take that logic out of these scenarios, so that when we think about what we're working on, it can have a direct consequence on our thinking and not just an emotional one. All right, so from here, I'm going to go into the area of efficiencies. Um, so one of the efficiencies that I've always found useful, that not everyone agrees with, is the idea of typing and typing speed. You can lose a lot of time having to look at your keyboard as you type. Learning to touch type is a powerful skill. There are also different keyboard formats that you can use that can be more suited to coding. I say can be because it's different for every person. And depending on the amount of time you practice, the choice that you made, even the equipment that you have, the way you're sitting, your outcomes can be different. So from that perspective, I have a story and a little video to actually show today. So I was working in a company where I was the team lead, and we had a bit of a mishmash of skill levels and experience in the team. Not everyone was at the same level. It's not. Some of them had almost no experience in the technologies we were working at. It was quite varied. So one of the focuses that I had was to try to help the different team members kind of become better developers. Um, so one of the suggestions that I had was exactly this: typing speed. And my suggestion was basically you should try to spend at least 15 minutes every single day, because really it's about practice. Even 15 minutes, it's about practice, practice, practice. It's not a skill you can just learn overnight. It needs to become muscle memory. So that was my suggestion, to say, you know what, we should try to take the time, and assuming you don't have more important things to spend your time on, try to find a time, 15 minutes a day, practice your typing, improve your typing. And there are many, let alone apps, there are just many websites that you can go and log into, and they help you learn, they help you train, they help focus on making sure that you're a rounded typist, and kind of continuously adapt their 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 their, their input to ensure that you're learning and you're improving. And so for me, it was like a fairly reasonable request. And most of the team members, were like, yeah, okay, we'll see. And I knew one or two of them might try a little bit, but as with all things, most of them are not going to dedicatedly do it every single day, and that's fine. But the one guy kind of just didn't respond, and I was like, oh, well, okay, maybe he'll do it, maybe he won't. So then at some future point, I kind of brought it up again to say, you know what, so one of the things I was suggesting to the team was that this is what we should do. And this guy was there, and he basically laughed, and he's like, you're not serious, right? How can you possibly think that typing better is going to make you a better developer? And I was a little bit taken aback, but that's what he thought. That typing is not going to help me in any way, and perhaps that was right for him. But as you become a better developer, the thing that is going to hold you back is the speed in which you can work. No matter how easily you can solve problems in your mind, if you're going to be finger typing, you're going to have a bad time, because your ability to produce code is going to become problematic. And it's going to become problematic for you because let's say you can solve a problem in 5 seconds, but it takes you 2 minutes to actually transfer that solution through the keyboard to your code editor. What is your mind going to do in those other minute and 55 seconds? I can tell you what it's not going to do. It's not going to stay focused, because it's going to be literally sitting there and twiddling its thumbs, because the problem is solved. Now you're just typing. So to close that gap is something that becomes important as solving problems becomes easier. So along those lines, I have a video as well. So this is actually something that I discovered quite recently. This is a YouTube video that was released by someone by the name of William Lin. And he was the winner of the Giggle, the Google Kickstart Round A for 2020, plus his face cam. And essentially, it's a coding competition, which many of the entrants take incredibly seriously. From what I understand, you have about 3 hours to solve. I think it's about maybe 5 questions. Yeah, and your ranking is essentially the amount of time that you took to solve those questions. The less time you take, the better you rank. And this is something that there are many developers who take incredibly seriously. A number of them view it as an esport, simply because it's about a lot of things. And you kind of have to focus, you have to be fast, and it is incredibly competitive. So yeah, I'm just going to show you a little bit of this. Essentially, him answering the first question. From what you're seeing now is the page that's going to load, and it's going to load up. He'll be able to see the question in the browser. He'll be able to try out some answers and test to see if it's giving the correct output or not the correct output. And then he'll be able to submit his answer once he's happy that the solution is correct. Just to confirm, you all can see the video. It's not doing anything yet. I just want to make sure the screen is correct. Awesome. Cool beans. So let's see. Sound is on. And something I'd like for everyone to pay attention to is it's quite obvious what his typing speed is. So listen for that.
Result is just greedy. You just pick the smallest houses to buy. Oh, I have to output this. Okay.
Solved. There was not enough time there for me to even read that question, let alone the speed at which he's answered it. So this is an example of where you can get to simply, well, amongst many other things, but simply by improving your typing speed. So yes, and then the next time I have a team member saying, okay, I'm going to need the whole sprint to do this, I'm going to be very tempted to show them this video and ask, a whole sprint doing what? Yes, but anyway, this is obviously, someone who's at the top of their game. He's probably seen the question before. That's why he kind of just picks up the critical portions to it and can very quickly form an answer, because I would assume it's more about memory than it is about actually having to sit and figure out and logic it out. But hey, I mean, I would not even presume to understand what it's like at the top of your game when you're that skilled. So, and although I say skilled, it's probably 0.1% skill and 99% practice and hard work. That's got him there. So, from that perspective, this is just something to remember, that you can aim for. So what I will do is, when I do upload this to YouTube, I will put in the link to his channel, to this video, and to a follow-up video that he does, where he essentially talks about how he's done it. He kind of goes through the different steps and goes through the solutions that he's done. But in that 3-hour time frame, I believe he completes it all in 1 second, 16 minutes and 5 seconds. 4 questions, all tests passed successfully in 16 minutes and 5 seconds out of 3 hours. So this also again goes to show, in the last video I talked about the gap between developers, how you can have 2 senior developers and yet have a massive difference between what one senior developer can do and what another senior developer can do. This is an extreme case of that. Yeah, so that is around typing speed. Another form of efficiency is keyboard shortcuts. As you write code and you become comfortable in a language or a framework, you start to do more and more of the same things. You're creating classes, you're creating functions, you're reorganizing code into different functions, you're creating test cases, you're reorganizing test cases, etc., etc. Keyboard shortcuts can be incredibly helpful to speed up this process, and they can be used in 2 general ways to make your efforts much easier. Number 1, shortcuts for navigating around your editor of choice. Quick ways to jump from file to file, to a particular section of the file, to move code around, to jump from function to function. The idea is, the more you can use your keyboard, the less you can use your mouse, the more efficient you're going to be, the more faster you're going to be. And the less time you're going to have between you mentally solving a problem and you actually making that solution a reality. The second idea is the idea of shortcuts for creating code, or commonly called templates. Defined templates for being able to quickly create repetitive sections of code, such as classes, functions, etc. And it's basically the idea that a class has a certain structure. And to create that class, you've essentially got to put out, I think, 3 things. Number 1, an output section in the definition. Number 2, a name. And number 3, any input parameters. Sorry, a function, not a class. So based on that, these templates via a keyboard shortcut can kind of essentially create a tiny wizard that allows you to kind of say, okay, we're going to slap some dummy code in here, and the first area of focus is going to be, for example, the output of the function. Then you tab to the name of the function. You type in the name. Then you tab to your input parameters of the function. and you put in your parameters, and it's done. All the other brackets, all the spacing, all the brackets around the input parameters, it's all put in automatically. Not only is this quicker because you don't have to put those in yourself, it's also quicker because those parts of the keyboard are a little bit more trickier to reach. So if you get to just focus on the sections of code where you're putting in just standard letters, it's just going to be faster. In addition to this, you can define these templates. So if you know, okay, I want to add in a comment area. So a piece of code and an additional wizard step for me to put a comment at the top of the function, so that every time I am using this this template, I'll have the option to put in a comment as well. You can. They're almost always customizable, and from that perspective, by spending a little bit of time up front, you can get a lot of value going forward. So yes, keyboard shortcuts. Another form of efficiency is using the best tools for the job. Using the correct code editor is important, as it is something that you will be looking at for a long time each day. Unless there is some sort of company restriction, spend time reading up on capabilities of different editors. Watch them over time, learn about them, even if you're not using them today. Even if you never use it, you may learn about capabilities that you never knew existed that your current editor may already support. Even simply setting proper colors to make the code more clear and to reduce eye strain really helps. In addition, there are many other tools that can help your efficiency, that is. From subscribing to online content, investing in an ergonomic keyboard and mouse to ensure that your hands are not stressed, to standing desks that can help with fitness, there's a lot of stuff out there, and it is totally worth your time to see what will benefit you. We all have our own set of difficulties, our own challenges, and it's not just in the space of code, but in the life that we lead around that code as well. So anything that can help is worth your time, because after all, you will be spending day after day for long periods of time working, and to try to make that as comfortable as possible is important in all the many different forms of comfort. All right, so a few small notes that I didn't quite have the time to expand as fully as I would have liked to, so I'll just wing it and see how it goes. Another skill that you don't really see much of is what I call the art of search. Others know it as a Google fu. The idea of knowing how to search to ensure the highest chance of success quickly. Be that on Google, be that on Stack Overflow, or on whatever format or area you're working within. It's incredibly important to pay attention to what terms you use, what terms work well, what rules work within a particular search bar. All of them make a lot of difference. The reality is we're all going to be spending a lot of time in the space looking for answers, and so it is always beneficial to be able to find those answers incredibly quickly. There's any number of times that I've had a developer ask, I've been looking at this thing for 3 hours, I've been searching all over Google, I cannot find anything about it. And I will open up a tab, and within my first 3 results, I'll find exactly what they're looking for. So it's incredibly important to pay attention. I'm sure there are online videos that can help you with this. Okay, some of them are a bit too focused in terms of they will teach you every single thing you need to know about how to use Google search, way more than you need to know for these particular purposes. But yes, I'm sure there are articles or there are videos online that will help you with these subjects, that will help you with being better able to search and ensure that you get good results. Online news resources. Having online news resources is incredibly important. There are many, and it's important to explore as everyone has different interests. Myself, I'm a big fan of the go-to conference videos on YouTube. High quality, good variety, and they are fantastic for when I'm driving to and from work. When I'm waiting to pick up one of my kids, or any other time I'm basically sitting in the car, I just pop open YouTube on my phone and listen. Some people prefer to read. I know guys who are like, okay, every day before I go to bed, I'll pull up one of my coding article sites and I'll make sure to read 3 articles. That's just their way. So look around, find something that works for you, find a timing or a space that works for you, and use it. When you're a junior and you're just starting up, you have so much that is unknown. And you're sitting in front of a PC with your code editor, and there are many different things that you need to know all at the same time that you don't know. And it is incredibly daunting. And some people, they go into analysis paralysis. They don't even know where to start. For others, they kind of go the other way, and they essentially look to seniors or those most willing to help and try to push as much help out of them as possible, not realizing that you're going to kind of be judged on how much you don't know, or rather how much you've not tried. So along those lines, you need to learn to draw the line between perseverance and asking for help. You need to try, but by the same token, don't spend 8 hours stuck on the same thing and not ask for help. One of the most important things, and at the same time, one of the most difficult things as a software developer, is the idea of prediction, of being able to say, okay, this is where I'm at. How do I tell if I'm going to get to what I'm aiming for? And I've seen many developers kind of use the idea of, okay, I'm about 20% and about half the sprint is over, but you know what, I'll catch it up over the weekend. And then the weekend comes and they'll be like, okay, we're now in the second week of the sprint and I'm 30%, right? The fact that you had to work over the weekend, not great. Then you're saying, okay, it's now the second week, right? I've got some catching up to do, right? I'm going to start maybe spending an hour in the evenings trying to catch up. And so they do that. And then they get to Thursday, the day before the end of the sprint. And they go, okay, I'm 60%. So if I just push a good few hours this evening, I can get there. And then it's Friday morning and it's the end of the sprint. And you're only 70%. And there's some companies and some teams that you can go to your team and say, okay, listen, I know it's Friday, right? But this thing's only going into testing on Monday morning. So how about I finish it off over the weekend and then it can go into testing on Monday morning. And now you're working again on the weekend, a second weekend in a row. Where did it all go wrong? It went wrong because in the beginning, you assumed that you could do this in a 2-week period. Now, there's nothing wrong with that because it's an assumption. We don't know. We're going to try to, and we're kind of generally going to guess that, okay, I should be able to manage this in 2 weeks, as opposed to 1 week or 2 days or 4 weeks. So in that sense, we have some idea, but the reality is we don't know. The aim is to try to know as much as possible, as quickly as possible. And another thing that causes a problem is that they will start with the easy tasks. And they'll say, you know what, I'll get the easy stuff done and I'll tackle the hard stuff in the second week. And it should be fine. I'm sure I'll manage. And that's not where you want to be because you want to reduce unknowns. And the hard stuff is the unknowns you want to reduce. So you can know, okay, you know what, there's 5 things that are hard in this task that I need to do. It's the end of the first week of the sprint. I've managed to do 2 of them. There is no way I'm going to finish this by the end of the sprint. And you need to reach that point, and you need to speak to your team accordingly. Because as a team lead or as a project manager, the worst thing is to expect something to go into testing and it's halfway done. And it's going to be another entire sprint before it is hopefully completed. So from that perspective, you know, I've seen all developers really struggle with this. And the only way to really do it is you've got to tackle the hard stuff first. You've got to reduce those unknowns to knowns as quickly as possible. Because if you don't, you're going to find yourself not in a great space. You know, and as a developer, you're going to be spending a lot of your time thinking. You're going to be using a lot of mental energy. And you need time to get that mental energy back. You need to rest. You need to rest your mind. You need to do things that you enjoy to take away that struggle that you go through the day. And it is incredibly unhealthy, especially for long periods of time, to, so to speak, borrow out of that time to work. Working in the evenings, working over the weekends, that's all mental rest time that you're taking away from. And you don't see the immediate consequences, but over time, it starts to hurt. And it doesn't hurt in the ways of work. It hurts in, like, you know what, you start to become a bit shorter-tempered or less tolerant of others, or any number of different non-work specific ways, you know, because your mind is more and more unhappy. You become more restless. You start struggling to sleep, because your mind is struggling to come down from that high functioning state. Any number of different issues you run into. And I've seen this with developers in companies where that's kind of the expectation. There are some companies and some developers, especially early in their careers, who kind of go into companies who have the expectation of going over and above for over and above compensation. So from that perspective, you know, all of those positions, they have a time limit. What the time limit is dependent on the individuals who are doing it. Some people can burn out really quickly. Others can really go for quite a few years before they kind of hit that point where they say, okay, I can't do this anymore. So yeah, you know, you gotta try to manage these things. There's this time management. There's ideas of not just code. You got to try to pay attention to them. You got to try to manage them, and you got to try to work realistically. Then there's the idea of fearlessness, and I call it fearlessness, but not recklessness. It's this idea of you got to have this problem solving, give it a bash, even though you know nothing, but you're not afraid to fail attitude. Don't be paralyzed. You gotta really try. Even though you have no idea what you're doing, you gotta keep just putting one foot in front of the other and keep going forward. Yeah. So this other resource that's helped me as well is this website called Coding Game. And it's one of many different event-based coding sites, communities, and theirs are largely based around artificial intelligence and building something that you can compete with other players in the form of a game. So you write code, and this thing translates into actions that some game character will do, and how well you do will kind of be determined by how well you do against the other players. And I found it really good because when I joined, I knew nothing about AI. And okay, AI is a bit of a stretch these days, but it's very simple artificial intelligence, and it's one of those that's very pro new developers. There's almost any language you can work on your code in, and yeah. So if you get a chance, if you got friends who are coding, get together, join up, form a team, work together. It's one of the few resources and areas where you can actually work on teamwork before actually joining a team and joining a company. 1 second, let me just pull up. There we go. So let's go check it out. Give it a bash. It's one of those things that works well. As when you have a bunch of friends who are interested in this kind of thing, and it works well, especially when you're studying, because especially in your later years of studying, you're going to have group projects. You're going to have where you're required to work with other individuals. And if you have a group or a bunch of friends that you work with or you'll study together a lot, this is just one of those additional spaces where you can kind of push that. And these events, it usually doesn't last more than about a week. It's usually the beginning of one weekend to the end of the next. So you go in, you kind of just give it a bash for a week. Hell, you even give it a bash over the weekend, and you kind of just see where you are at the end. They're also very staggered. So every 2 or 3 days, that introduce a new capability that you can program into your code that was not there previously. So this is one of those that can be incredibly helpful, and I encourage people to try it out, even if it's by yourself. So I think that's it for the presentation for today. We'll have a Q&A session. There is a Discord server, although apparently it does not seem to be working at the moment. So, but normally you'd be able to just drop your questions onto the Discord server question and answer channel. But hey, this is Twitch. We have a chat channel, so please drop your questions as well into chat. I have 2 that's come through on Discord, so let's start off with those. Oh, oof, okay. What a humdinger to start off with. I struggle to work with other people. How can I improve on this? Um, this is one of those how long is a piece of string questions. But what it basically comes down to is your ability to work with people in general. We all have different levels at which we communicate with other people. From some of us who are incredibly extroverted to some of us who are incredibly introverted, and everywhere in between. Um, so the idea of extroversion and introversion is not the idea of the enjoyment of doing something, as many people think generally. It's around the concept of energy levels. An introverted person gains energy by kind of being by themselves, their alone time. An extroverted person gains energy by being with others. They're feeling tired and drained when they're isolated by themselves. And the introverted person is invertedly the same as well. When they're amongst lots of people, it is draining and it is tiring to them. And because of the way memory works and the way I've kind of explained earlier, we remember that. And so when we think of that experience later, we're automatically getting drained just thinking about it. And so you become more and more isolated as an introverted person. And unfortunately, it also means that you become less and less experienced working with other people. And so when you're going and having to interact with different people, it becomes a scary experience because there's more of a level of difference between that person who may be comfortable speaking with people and have a set of expectations on that comfort and communication ability, and yourself, who's maybe very nervous, may not quite be able to understand what the person is saying, and you may be afraid, not sure, you don't want to ask because you don't want to seem like you don't know what they're talking about. And so there are many of these different mindsets and ideas that those who are less comfortable working with others kind of have in mind, have in their minds. And the reality is, especially if you're a junior, as you're going to have people who are going to be incredibly understanding and tolerant towards you. They may say it, everyone may say it, but no one seems to believe it. There is no such thing as a stupid question. There really isn't. And I'll reiterate, there is no such thing as a stupid question, because the reality is you do not know. Does not matter who knows. The reality is you do not know. And you need to take the opportunity to ask your question, because you may feel, oh, it's a bit silly, no one else seems to be asking the question. If they're all in the same boat as you, they're also not going to know the answer. So by you asking the question, you're not only fulfilling your own knowledge, you're doing them all a favor. So that's the one thing, right? The next thing is, there is one thing that is worse than not knowing, and that is not knowing when other people expect you to know. And what I mean by that specifically is the next step in this scenario of not asking that question is the assumption is going to be that you know what's going on. And that person may explain 5 more things based on that understanding of that first point. And you're not going to understand any of it. And then a week later, he's going to be trying to explain something. And it's going to become obvious to him that you have no clue what is going on. And that now is the hot water. That is where you do not want to be. So the expectation from seniors for those coming in at a junior level is that they do not know. So you are perfectly within your right to ask that question. It does not matter if you did your master's summa cum laude from Harvard or MIT. If you do not know, you do not know. Like I've said in one of my previous videos, when you're studying, what they're teaching you is the ability to read the books in the library of software development. The expectation is that you do not really know what is in those books. That is what you need to start going through and learning when you start working. So that is one of the struggles that people have working with other people. There's many other different areas, and quite possibly I may make an entire video based on this sometime down the road. But you know, go in with the expectation that no matter how well you did in whatever studies that you did, you're not particularly smart, because that is the reality. You know very little. Even if you got amazing marks, an intermediate developer will very quickly outclass you in a task that needs to be done. Again, exceptions. But generally, that is the rule. You know, the more smart you are, the more isolated you're going to become, because you're further away from the average developer. And that is not a good place to be. You want to try to be in touch with your team, because when it comes time to get things done, it is going to be a team effort, no matter how good you are at what you do. And if your team is going to kind of put you in the mental corner of, oh, this guy, he's too smart for his own good, you know, he is doing things in, 1 hour that is taking the rest of us 1 day to do, there is nothing wrong with you being able to do it in 1 hour, assuming it's done correctly, right? But it does mean that you will have to make a larger effort to stay in touch with your team. If you finished early or you finished quickly, spend a bit of time, help them, and try to do it in a way that is as comfortable for them as possible, because the reality is you are smarter than them. But the reality to them is that to some extent, they feel stupid in front of you. And that's embarrassing. And they are absolutely entitled to that emotion and that feeling. So you got to make that effort to try to say, okay, you know what? Let me help you out, and do it in a way that's with minimum ego, with minimum attitude, with minimum in your face, and have their backs, assist them, know that, they can be comfortable in the knowledge that we are all on the same team, not it's the team of average developers and Mr. Smarty Pants, who is not interested in the rest of us normies. You do not want to be there. So so that's just one of the many things and many scenarios and many areas that can make or break teams, that can make or break your ability to communicate with other people. And it can be very much out of the blue. You're not going to be able to predict everything. There was times that I made a 2-second joke about something to have that person go to HR about it and have HR come and have to speak, or my team lead come and have to speak to me and say, listen, what you said, that's not on around here. So these things happen. So you just got to try to learn your best, be aware, be humble, and do your best. All right, second question. how can I improve on my typing? Okay, so there was one that I used to use. Let's see if I can just perhaps find it quickly. But yeah, if you just Google it, 10fastfingers.com, Key Hero, Speed Typing Online, Typing Academy, Ratatype, the Typing Cat. There's any number of websites where you can go in and learn to type, and many of them are what you would call gamified. So they try to make it as entertaining. You're kind of competing against others at your same level. It's kind of adaptive so that it's not the same thing over and over every single day. So they because they want you to come to their sites and learn to type. Otherwise they wouldn't have created the site. So they're well invested into trying to make it as enjoyable for you as possible. And like I said, the aim is you don't need to go and spend an hour every single day to go and try to break typing speed world records. That is not the aim. The aim is to kind of just go and spend 15 minutes a day, even 10 minutes a day, even 10 minutes a day, and just little by little by little by little improve. Even if you can touch type without having a particularly fast speed, you're way ahead of someone who cannot touch type. And touch type being to be able to type without having to look at your keyboard. And that introduces all sorts of capabilities. If you can touch type and you merge that with using keyboard shortcuts, as opposed to having to go to your mouse, you're now in 2 ways faster than someone who can't touch type and who has to go and use their mouse to scroll around or to change files and things of that sort. So and then there's even more synergies to be had. Like, for example, people come in on the mornings and they kind of struggle to get into work and just kind of sit down and say, right, okay, let's get going. There's lots of procrastination, checking emails and chatting around the water cooler, making coffee and things of that sort. And it's a lot of okay, finally, yeah, okay, I guess let me get into it. And one of the easiest ways to break this, as a general sense, it doesn't matter whether you're trying to motivate yourself to exercise every day, whether it's to learn something every day, whatever it is that you're trying to do, one of the easiest ways to do it is pick a small part of it and do that. And so if it's a case of just saying, okay, I'm going to sit at my desk, 10 minutes of typing, easy peasy, I've been rocking it recently, I'm the number one in my group, it's a good way to start. And then once you're sitting there, your fingers are, so to speak, warmed up, then you just go, okay, let's get going. I've got one thing done for today. I've done the typing, and it's a good way to start your day. It's, you acknowledge a small task that you've done. It's a small victory. You've learned a bit about your type. You've improved your typing a little bit, and off you go in that manner. So it's about, a lot of improving software development. It's about finding these synergies. There's ways to be more motivated, to be more dedicated, and all of these things kind of meld together. They work together. An incredibly good developer is not incredibly good at one thing. He is probably reasonably good at many things, a wide variety of things inside the coding space and outside the coding space. So yeah. that's kind of typing and the general idea of improvement. Any other questions? Oof, it was a fairly long session today. Okay, then I think we'll leave it at that. I will immediately now have a look at why our my brain's a little bit fried now. Why our Discord server link is not working in Twitch, and then I'll fix that. And then yeah, we are always available on Twitch. Pop in, ask your questions. Kind of just hang out, say hi, and yeah, we're here to help. The aim of this channel is to create a community for those who have none, and there isn't. As a senior developer, there's a number of groups that you can join that are in many areas and in many communities around, whether you're working with databases, whether you're working with management concepts like Agile. There are many of these groups that you can find and that people go and join and attend, maybe a monthly session, maybe a 3-monthly session, and they kind of get to know their community. But it doesn't really exist at a much lower level of those who have just started to work, those who have very little experience, who are not really aware of even these groups, let alone anything else, that these groups exist. So the aim of this channel is to kind of create that space, a space for those individuals to pop in and ask questions, say hi, get some guidance, just get some experience in general. I think the general consensus for any one of us in this community is going to be that none of us are experts in this area, because it's not really one form of expertise. I mean, if you've watched these discussions, you'll see on any day I'm talking from something about psychology, to something about mental health, to something about code, to something about exercise. It's a wide range of things, and in some ways it's a lifestyle, and you got to find for your own long-term health in all its many forms, you got to find a lifestyle that works for you in the development environment. So yes, I will leave it at that. Yeah, and for all of us, let's go from good code to a great career together. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.